Hi there, and welcome to the first of our lessons on cell structure, which is part of Unit 1 of the National 5 biology course. So let's kick off with the cell ultrastructure and functions. Now, this is almost always the very first question in the paper, both in the multiple choice and in the section 2. So it's a good idea to know all your cell type, your cell types and your cell parts and functions. Now, cell parts are often called organelles. Sometimes my students get confused in exam when they see the word organelle. So when we're talking about all these cell parts that you can see listed on the screen, these can also sometimes be called organelles or cell structures. Okay, so if you see one of these words, you'll know what it means. So the cell structures that you need to know about are the cell wall, the mitochondrion, the chloroplast, the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, the vacuole, the nucleus, the ribosome, and the plasmid. Now, not only do you need to know the names, you have to be able to recognize them in a diagram of a cell. You have to be able to label them. You also need to be able to state their function. And finally, you have to be able to state which cells you would find those structures within. So what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to go through each of the cell types. We're going to go through each of the structures that are found in those cell types typically, and we're going to talk a little bit about the function as well of all of these. So if we have a look in the left hand side, I've listed all the cell structures, but I've also put some letters after each one. Okay, now those letters stand A for animal cells, P for plant cells, B for bacterial cells, and F for fungal cells. So you can see which cells we are likely to find each of these structures, and that's an important thing to know. We'll do a wee exercise on that coming up, but you need to know that for your exam, because if you get asked a question on this, you need to be able to state that, for example, the bacterial cell is the only cell that doesn't have a nucleus, or the bacterial cell is the only one that has a plasmid, or that the plant cell is the only one with a chloroplast. Okay, the ability to quickly rhyme off which cells have which features is going to be a big advantage in your exam. So let's kick off with the animal cell first of all. So top right, in the diagram here, we've got an animal cell. So first of all, we're going to kick off with the cytoplasm. Now, the cytoplasm is the site of chemical reactions within the cell, and it tends to be that sort of open white space that is found in the diagram of a cell. Next up, we have the cell membrane. That controls which substances enter and exit the cell. That's on the outside, and all the cells have that. Okay, they all have a cell membrane. Next up, we've got the nucleus. Now, the nucleus is usually pointing to a little black dot in the centre of the cell. Um, Technically, the nucleus is the whole structure there, including the membrane that goes around the nucleus as well. But we'll keep it simple for Nat 5 just now, and you won't be expected to know the actual name of the little black dot there. So we'll call all of that the nucleus, and we'll recognise the nucleus on the other cells as well, hopefully, when we get to them. Next up, we've got the ribosomes. The ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis within the cell. Ribosomes are essential to make proteins such as hormones, antibodies, enzymes, and other important proteins that help our bodies to function properly. And they are found either free within the cytoplasm, so all those little black dots that you can see throughout the cytoplasm, that's ribosomes, but they're also found attached to that structure there that is just next to the nucleus. Okay, again, you don't need to know the name of that at this stage, but you'll learn more about that if you go on to do advanced higher biology. Okay, so the ribosomes are those little dots there, and they're the site of protein synthesis. Next up, we've got the mitochondria. Now, the mitochondria are these structures that have that oval shape and this sort of squiggly, wavy inner circle within the inside of the structure. Now, you need to be able to recognise those. Those are one of the new structures that you are probably learning about in National 5 that maybe you haven't come across before. So the ability to recognise that is important, and to remember that it's the site of something called aerobic respiration, which we'll learn about later in the course in topic 1.6. Okay, but it's the site of aerobic respiration. So that's the animal cell, and that's the main structures that we need to know within the animal cell for National 5 biology. So make sure that you can A, recognise them, and B, tell if they're in an animal cell or not. Okay, the ability to do that will be important in some exam questions. Moving on to the plant cell, we have the nucleus, and you can see it looks similar in both diagrams between the plant and the animal cell. Okay, we've got the cytoplasm, again, that empty white space in the diagram there. We've got the cell membrane. Now, what you'll note in the plant cell is there are actually two outer layers on the plant cell. The inner of the two layers is the cell membrane, and it performs the same function in a plant cell, controlling what substances enter and exit the cell. The cell wall is the outer of those two layers on the outside. It provides structure, shape, and support for the cell. Okay, which is again will be very important in future topics. We'll talk about the cell wall and the importance of its role. We have the chloroplast. The chloroplast are little green structures. They're obviously just black and white here, but they're green structures normally. And you can see that although they have an oval shape in a similar way to the mitochondria, you can see there's a significant size difference there. And you can also see there's a difference in terms of the pattern of the structures within the chloroplast. Okay, so try and make sure you can tell the difference between a chloroplast and a mitochondria, because that is a common mistake that students do make, is mixing up the two of them. Next up, we've got the mighty mitochondria again, the mitochondria, which is the site of aerobic respiration. We've got the vacuole. Now, the vacuole is not found in the animal cell, but is found in the plant cell. It contains the cell sap, and it also helps to keep the cell turgid. And that's a word we'll learn about in the next topic, is turgid. And finally, we've got the ribosome there. Okay, ribosomes are found in all cells. So they're found in the animal cells at the top there, as well as the plant cells that we are just currently looking at. Okay, so again, make yourself familiar with all of the structures within the plant cell, because there's a good chance you might be asked about some of them come your exam time. Moving on, the third cell type we're going to look at today is the fungal cell. So the fungal cell is similar to the plant cell in many ways, and in many ways to the animal cell, but it's more similar to the plant. But it has a very different cell wall structure to the plant. Okay, it's made of a different material. The plant cell wall is made of something called cellulose, whereas the fungal cell wall is made of a different material. At National 5 level, you don't actually need to know the name of that material. Fungal cell also has a vacuole similar to our plant cells. It has a cell wall, again on the outside there, providing that structure and support for our cell. It has a cell membrane, controlling what enters and exits the cell. Cytoplasm, which is the site of chemical reactions, and is this sort of clear space in the middle. We've got our ribosomes that are spread throughout the cell, which are the site of protein synthesis. We've got the mitochondria, the site of aerobic respiration, and we've got the nucleus, which is the site where all of the cell's activities are controlled. Okay, so we control all the cell's activities there. We also contain our genetic material as well in the nucleus. That's something that will be worth remembering. The question does come up on that in one of the future topics. So remembering that that's where our DNA, or genetic information, is stored within the nucleus is useful to know as well. The bacteria structure. Now, the bacteria is probably the most different cell compared to the other ones. It lacks a number of the important organelles that other cells have, and it has additional structures as well. As well as that, the cell wall, which it does have in common with both the fungal and plant cell, is made of a different material. It's not made of cellulose like the plant cell is. Okay, so the cytoplasm, similar to the other cells, site of chemical reactions. Cell membrane, same as the other cells, controls what substances enter and exit the cell. The cell wall, we mentioned, provides structure and support and is made of a different material in the bacterial cell. The plasmid, that's an additional circular piece of DNA there, which is vital for the bacteria in terms of the exchange of genes. But we don't necessarily need to know much about that at National 5. We just need to be able to identify it, so look out for that circular structure on a bacterial cell. It has ribosomes, the site of protein synthesis, and it has a circular chromosome. Now, what you'll notice most prominently about the bacterial cell, as well as having these additional features, it lacks some of the other features that we find in the other cells, such as the nucleus and the mitochondria. Okay, so that's a common question in the exam to describe the differences and similarities between, say, a bacterial cell and a fungal cell. You'd be saying the similarities are things like the cell wall or the ribosomes, but the differences are going to be that the bacterial cell does not have a nucleus, whereas the fungal cell does, or the fungal cell has a mitochondrion, whereas the bacterial cell does not. Okay, something similar to that would be sufficient for a question like that. Okay, and just to reiterate, the cell wall is made of cellulose in plant cells, but of a different material in fungal and bacterial cells. So let's do a little recap on the cell structures and which ones are present in which particular cells. Now, if you're watching this video, you can press pause at this stage and you can sit and work through this little table on your own at home and see how many of them you can get right. What I'll do is I'll go through them row by row and give you the correct answers. So pause now if you're looking to do this at home. Okay, so hopefully you got a chance to fill those in. So let's go through it row by row. So which of the cells have a cell membrane? Now this is one of the structures which is found in all of our cells. Okay, so the cell membrane is a structure found in all of our 4 cells. Next one is the nucleus. Now, as we discussed before, the nucleus is present in all of the cells apart from the bacterial cell. The cell wall is found in 3 of the cells as well. The cell it's not found in is the animal cell, but it's found in the plant, fungal, and bacterial cell. The mitochondrion is found in 3 of the cells also, but it's not found in the bacterial cell. The ribosome is found in all of the cells. So well done if you correctly identified that. The chloroplast is found only in the plant cell. The plasmid is found only in the bacterial cell. The vacuole is found in both plant and fungal cells. And lastly, the cytoplasm is found in all 4 of our cells. Okay. Now, it would be a good idea to make sure that you can fill in a table like this. If you can fill in the list of organelles, the list of functions, and the cell in which we find each of those organelles. If you can do all this, you'll have no bother with the first couple of questions in both sections of the exam paper. Okay, because they do tend to be on this topic and they do tend to test you on this content. Okay, so hopefully that's helped in terms of the cell structure and looking at the 4 cells and all the various organelles we find within them. So the last thing that we're going to cover in this first topic is how we calculate cell size. Okay, now calculating cell size is a common calculation that we have to do in the exam paper. It's come up a few times, so it's worth being able to work out how to do this. Now, this excerpt from the exam paper from one of the past papers is shown on the screen here, and it says, the diagram below shows a group of human cheek cells as seen under a microscope, okay? And we can see them here in this field of view. The actual diameter of the field of view was 2 millimeters. Okay, that's an important detail, the 2 millimeters. Now, when we are looking at this and we're wanting to work out the average length of the cells, we need to count the number of cells across the field of view. So in this occasion, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now we need to know that number. That's an important number to know. Just to say, the mistake that students often make with this question is they will count all of the cells within the field of view. That's not what we're looking for. We know the diameter is 2, that's straight across here. So we're counting the number of cells that go straight across here as well. Okay. Now the little formula for working out the cell size is getting the diameter, which is 2 on this occasion, dividing it by the number of cells across, which is 5. 2 divided by 5 will give you 0.4. And then that 0.4 needs to be times by 1,000. Why does it get times by 1,000? Because initially the diameter was in millimeters, but the answer needs to be in micrometers. And this useful conversion here tells us that 1 millimeter is equal to 1,000 micrometers. To convert from millimeters to micrometers, we have to times by 1,000. Now, bear in mind that there might be an occasion where they don't ask for the answer in micrometers, or they give you the field of view in micrometers. So that conversion isn't always going to happen, but in most of the questions I've seen, you've had to do that. And what they'll do is, if you have to do it, they will give you the scale here so that you can see how many times you have to multiply it by, or go the other way where you have to divide it. Okay, and I've put 3 examples here for you to try out at the moment. So using what we've just discussed for the first example here, can you have a go at 1, 2, and 3 examples? Okay, so remember it's the diameter divided by the number of cells across, and then we times it by 1,000 to convert it from millimeters to a micrometers answer. So pause the video now and have a go at these 3 examples. Okay, hopefully you got on okay with them, and we managed to fill those in. So let's fill in some working for these 3. So we know the formula is the diameter divided by the number of cells across. So here the diameter is 4. The number of cells across is also 4. So 4 divided by 4 gives you 1. Then we times that by 1,000. 1 times 1,000. 1,000 is going to give us 1,000. So the answer is 1,000 micrometers for that first one. The second one here, we've got 10 millimeters as the diameter. Okay, so we do 10 and we divide it by the number of cells across here, which is 5. Okay, 10 divided by 5 is 2. And again, we times that number by 1,000. Okay, so 2 times 1,000 gives us 2,000 as our answer for this second one. Okay. And lastly, we've got a diameter of 2. And we're going to divide that by the number of cells across here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 2 divided by 8 is going to give us 0.25. Okay. We then times that by 1,000. 0.25 times by 1,000 gives us an answer of 250 micrometers. Okay, 250 there. All right. So hopefully those little examples there have helped you. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at some past paper questions on topic 1 of cell structure. Okay, so if we have a wee look at some of the past paper questions then for section 1 here. Now, what I've done is I've made up a little resource here, which I'll make available for you to download and have a look at, where I've put every past paper question, or until very recently, into a little pack where you can go through it topic by topic. And I think that's useful for revision after you do each topic. So some of the questions here, let's go through them together and we'll see how you get on, okay? So if you want to pause the video again as we go through the question, you can answer it and then I'll give you the solution. So this one here, which structural feature is found in a plant cell and not in an animal cell? Okay, we've got the choice of the nucleus, the cell wall, the cell membrane, and the cytoplasm. Okay, so answer that just now. Press pause. And the answer we're looking for there is B, cell wall. Okay, a cell wall is found in a plant cell, but not an animal cell. Question 2, the diagram shows parts of a plant cell. We've got A, B, C, and D there. Which part of this cell is composed of cellulose? Now, if we think back to the presentation, we found that the plant cell wall was made of cellulose. Okay, that's what we learned. The plant cell wall was made of cellulose. So which one of those is pointing to a cell wall? The answer is going to be B there. Okay, number 3. Which of the following diagrams represent 3 different cells, P, Q, and R? We have to identify the plant cell or cells here. Okay, so pause the video and see what you come up with, and hopefully you had a chance to answer that there. Now, P, I think we can see that P is probably going to be a plant cell based on the vacuole and the chloroplasts and the cell wall that we can see there. Now, cell Q is a bit trickier, okay? Cell Q is a little bit trickier. Now, I can understand why you might not think it's a plant cell because we can't see any of the chloroplasts there. But actually, the year this was in the exam, P and Q were both classed as plant cells there. So they'll be looking for B for that one. Okay, P and Q. Next question. We've got a diagram represents a typical plant cell, which the labelled parts could also be found in a fungal cell. So K is pointing to the cytoplasm. We also find that in a fungal cell. L is pointing to the cell wall. We also find that in a fungal cell. And M is pointing to the nucleus. We also find that in a fungal cell. So the answer there is going to be D, K, L, and M. Question 6. The diagram shows a single cell. The structure labelled X is made of, so we've got a choice of starch, cellulose, protein, or phospholipid. So X there, what is X pointing to, and what is it made of? I'll give you a chance to answer that. And if you've answered that, you should have found that X was the cell wall, and because it's a plant cell, it would be made of cellulose. Okay, so B there for number 6. The diagram below shows a plant cell. Which part of the cell would also be found in an animal cell? So we look at our 4 cell parts and we decide which one of those is also found in an animal cell. So I'll let you get a chance to answer that, and we'll have a quick run through. So P is the chloroplast, N is the ribosome, O is the mitochondria, and M is the vacuole. So which of them are found in an animal cell? Well, the vacuole is not, the chloroplast is not, but the ribosome and the mitochondria both are. So we're looking for N and O, which would be B for this question. And another question here, which line in the table correctly describes the functions of the cell wall and the mitochondria in plant cells? So for the column here, function of cell wall, we've got 2 choices. We either say it prevents the cell bursting or it controls the entry of substances. Now, we know for sure that controlling the entry of substances is the job of the cell membrane. And if we think about the job of the cell wall, it's to provide structure and support and shape for the cell. So therefore, that is going to be what prevents the cell bursting. The function of the mitochondria, we know it's the site of aerobic respiration. So if we put those two bits of knowledge together, A is going to be A there. The cell wall prevents the cell bursting, and the mitochondria is the site of aerobic respiration. Okay. So that was some multiple choice questions in that topic. What we'll do is we'll do a couple of the section 2 questions to get you used to those as well. This one here says a group of students carried out an investigation into the variety of cell types. They examined the types of cell they examined are shown in the box below. So we've got an animal cell, a plant cell, a bacterial cell, and a fungal cell. You have to identify the type of cell which have a cell wall. So if we think back to learning about the structures, they all had a cell wall apart from the animal cell. So you should be writing down for your answer here, plant, bacterial, and fungal. Okay, plant, bacterial, and fungal. Identify the type of cell which have a plasmid. Okay, so the type of cell which has a plasmid is the bacterial cell, only the bacterial cell as well. So we pop that in here. Part 3, some organelles are found in all cells. Choose one of the following and tick the appropriate box. Describe the function of the chosen organelle. So if you chose the ribosome, you give that a tick and you write down the function. If you choose the mitochondria, you give that a tick and write down the function. So hopefully you've had a chance to have a go at that. The ribosome would be the site of protein synthesis, whereas the mitochondria would be the site of aerobic respiration. So depending on which one you chose, hopefully you managed to get the correct function there. Now, this question here is a bar graph question where we have to put the types of cells with their size of cell into this bar graph, okay? Now, the key thing with the bar graph is because the bottom axis is already filled in for you here, is to make sure that we fill in the side axes correctly here. Now, that vertical axis should be labelled with average size of cell, and then with the units there, which is micrometers, that should be written down the side of your bar graph. Now, if we look at the scale, how do we work out where it goes up in? Well, the highest number is 48. So realistically, we have to get the scale going up to 50. So if we start here at 0, and then we go up in tens, first of all, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60, we can see that 48 is going to fit comfortably in there. So that's probably a sensible scale to go up in as in tens. Okay, the animal cell will be 24, so that's 10, that's 20. And then because each of these boxes must be worth 2, because there's 5 of them, between 20 and 30 there, that means we're going up to the second box up for 24. So 24 would be here. For the plant cell, 48. So we go 10, 20, 30, 40. And then we go up to 8, which would be 2, 4, 6, 8 here for the plant cell. The bacterial one, this is a bit trickier, is 3. So we know that each small box is worth 2. So how do we get an odd number? Well, we go 2, and then that one's 4. So we just go halfway between the 2 and the 4, and we draw a nice clear straight line that doesn't touch either the 2 or 4 line, that's right in the middle between them. And similarly for the fungal cell, because it's 7, we go halfway between the 6 and the 8 box there. Okay, and we go straight across there and draw a nice clean straight line. Okay, so take care with your bar graphs. Make sure that you label the axes, that you get the scale right so it covers the full range of numbers here, and that when the number falls off one of the main grid lines, that you go halfway between, just so that you can make sure you get that nice and accurately and get the correct answer. And we'll do one more question here from section 2, just to finish off this lesson. Part A for this question, it says the diagram shows a typical animal cell and some of its structures. Okay, and we have to choose 2 of them and state their functions. So have a wee go at that just now. Choose 2 of these 4 and state their function. Okay, so hopefully you managed that. The ribosomes, if you chose them, they are the site of protein synthesis. The mitochondria is the site of aerobic respiration. The cytoplasm is the site of chemical reactions, and the cell membrane is the structure which controls the entry and exit of substances. Okay, it controls the entry and exit of substances. Part B, we look at the field of view of a light microscope that measures 2 millimeters in diameter. There were 20 plant cells counted in a line across the diameter. 1 millimeter is equal to 1,000 micrometers. Calculate the average size of a cell in micrometers. So we know that our formula from before is the diameter divided by the number of cells across. So the diameter is 2, and the number of cells across is 20. So we're going to do 2 divided by 20. And then we're going to times that answer by 1,000 because we need our answer in micrometers, okay? So you do 2 divided by 20, and you can just do that in your calculator instead of in your head. That's going to give you 0.1, and then 0.1 times 1,000 is going to give you 100. So we're looking for an answer of 100 micrometers here. Okay, so I hope that was a useful little lesson, and that the practice questions at the end also helped you. Do let me know in the comments if it was useful, and if there's anything else you'd like to know about or to be covered from this first topic. Thanks for now, folks. Dismissed.